You know that moment when the HOA president grabs a folding chair and hurls it like a goddamn javelin straight at your wife who can barely breathe without wincing? Yeah, that just happened. Lydia Beaumont stood there in the county courthouse aisle, chest puffed like she'd won a medal for community standards, while the chair clanged off the railing 2 feet from Claire's legs. My wife hadn't said a word. She was just trying to sit through another hearing without her spine betraying her. And Lydia? She smoothed her pearl necklace and smiled the same fake sweet smile she used at every block party. Like throwing furniture was just another Tuesday suggestion for better neighborhood harmony. They all thought I was the quiet guy with the slightly overgrown wisteria and a wife who needed a bench. They didn't know I'd spent 28 years as a forensic evidence reconstructor, sketching courtroom scenes for federal cases, mapping every twitch, every lie, every angle that later sent CEOs to prison. I don't yell. I observe. I reconstruct. And right then, with that chair still rocking on the floor, I was already drawing the exact arc of Lydia's arm in my mind, time-stamping the moment her carefully curated empire started to crack. We'd moved to Serenity Grove Estates 2 years earlier, because the clean air and slow pace were supposed to help Claire heal after 3 spinal surgeries. Autoimmune flare-ups, doctors said. She needed gentle sunlight, a place to rest without stairs, something stable. I built the stone bench myself near the eastern pavilion, wisteria climbing the backrest exactly as her physical therapist recommended. Filed the ADA exemption with photos, medical letters, the works. Approved in writing. Then Lydia took the HOA gavel, well, her ceremonial accountability wand, as she called the sparkly pen she waved around, and decided the rules were whatever she felt like that morning. The first violation notice arrived in a crisp cream envelope smelling like lavender and passive aggression. Unauthorized structure disrupts historical landscape symmetry. I reminded her of the exemption. She tilted her head, all concern and pearls. Oh, Logan darling, the board reviewed it again. The wisteria is non-conforming plant material. Your wife's little health project simply cannot supersede the community's aesthetic integrity. When I asked what aesthetic integrity meant for a woman who needed to sit without screaming, she shrugged like I'd asked about the weather. We all make sacrifices for harmony, don't we? I appealed. She denied it in 48 hours. I filed a stay. She countered with a nuisance complaint claiming the bench encouraged prolonged loitering and created visual imbalance. Visual imbalance. That was her favorite phrase. Like a stone bench with wisteria was somehow offending the beige McMansions more than the guy 3 streets over who painted his mailbox neon green and never got fined because his cousin was on the board. I stayed quiet at first. Claire begged me to let it go. We were still the new couple, still hoping the neighborhood would feel like home instead of a pastel prison. But I kept notes. I kept sketches. Every closed-door session where Lydia recalled votes that never happened. Every emergency email poll she sent at 11 p.m. to 3 people and called it quorum. I watched her fine the Patel family $600 for excessive visible motion, because their autistic son liked pacing the sidewalk barefoot. I watched her order old Mr. Whitaker to rip out his new handrail after he fell, called it aesthetically jarring. She even tried to cancel the annual tree lighting because the shadows might discriminate against certain lawn orientations. The woman was turning a suburban HOA into North Korea with better landscaping. And the neighbors? They whispered. They rolled their eyes behind her back. But nobody spoke up. Because speaking up meant your rose bushes suddenly violated height protocols, or your American flag was too patriotic for daily display. Lydia weaponized politeness the way other people weaponize knives. She never raised her voice at meetings. She just smiled and said things like, "We're all family here." Right before she ruined your life over a bench that literally helped my wife breathe. That morning in court, 15 minutes before the judge was due, Claire shifted slightly to ease the pressure on her spine. One small stretch. Lydia snapped like a rubber band. "Stop performing for sympathy," she hissed, loud enough for the gallery to hear. Then her hand shot out, snatched the chair from the wall stack, and sent it flying low and hard. The crash echoed like a gunshot. Claire flinched. The bailiff froze mid-step. I didn't. I opened my sketchbook and started drawing Lydia's exact posture, The angle of her throw, the smirk that said she still believed she owned the room. The bailiff finally picked up the chair like it was radioactive. Lydia didn't even blink. "This hearing will proceed when the atmosphere is civilized," she announced to no one, adjusting her blazer as if she'd just swatted a fly. The courtroom wasn't even in session yet. Judge Harlan was stuck in traffic. So for 5 glorious minutes Lydia held court like it was her living room, lecturing the dozen homeowners about maintaining standards. She brought up the Daw family's wind chimes again. Auditory clutter is still clutter. And laughed that tinkling laugh that made you want to throw something yourself. I glanced at Claire. She was rubbing her elbow, not from pain but from the sheer absurdity. I'd seen worse in federal court. Perjury breakdowns, men in $10,000 suits crying. But nothing quite as pathetic as a grown woman throwing furniture because someone dared to sit down. 3 nights earlier she'd staged one of her infamous neighborhood forums in the clubhouse. No agenda, no notice, just folding chairs arranged like a kangaroo court, and our names on little placards like defendants. She read bylaws for 45 minutes, calling the bench a sympathy prop, and making veiled comments about disproportionate accommodations disrupting equity. No one spoke. Not even Harlan Whitaker, the board parliamentarian who usually corrected her grammar. He just sat there gripping his rulebook like it might explode. Afterward I asked her one question in the parking lot. "Is this about a bench, Lydia, or about control?" She tapped Claire's name card with one manicured nail and walked away without answering. But I already knew the answer. It was never about the rules. It was about making sure everyone remembered who got to decide who sat where. The bailiff finally escorted Lydia into the hallway to cool off. She didn't protest, just smirked and said, "I'll return when civilized people are present." The room settled into awkward silence. Claire leaned close. "She almost hit me. She missed on purpose," I whispered. "She wanted me to react. But she doesn't know what I really do for a living." Across the aisle Harlan Whitaker was fidgeting with his fountain pen, uncapping and recapping it like a nervous tick. I'd been watching him for months. The man looked like he was swallowing glass every time Lydia opened her mouth. A week earlier, after her little forum, I'd stayed behind to help fold chairs. Surveillance, really. Harlan lingered over the sign-in sheets. I made small talk. "Rough meeting." He nodded, eyes on the paper. "It was meant for peace," he muttered. That line stuck. Peace. The kind you get when everyone's too scared to speak. I started watching him closer. During the mailbox color vote, he corrected her mid-sentence. During the fence height debate he abstained, first time ever. And now in this courtroom, he kept glancing at his briefcase like it contained nitroglycerin. When the judge finally arrived, Lydia swept back in, hair perfect, binder thicker than a phone book. She launched into her speech. Invasive flora, loitering, social imbalance. Never once mentioned the ADA exemption. She steamrolled clauses like a lawnmower over daisies. The judge interrupted. "Do you have a copy of that revocation vote, Ms. Beaumont?" Lydia smiled her pageant smile. "Exhibit D, Your Honor. Executive consensus." The judge flipped pages. His brows furrowed. "These minutes aren't signed. No quorum listed. No motion language." Lydia's smile twitched. "It was verbal, standard for drafts." "Verbal doesn't cut it under your own charter," the judge said flatly. "And no mention of the ADA exemption at all." For the first time Lydia had no scripted answer. Then Harlan stood up without being called. He walked to the clerk's table and slid over a plain envelope. No drama. Just the quiet click of truth landing. The judge tucked it under his folder without opening it yet, but the temperature in the room dropped 10 degrees. Lydia's eyes locked on Harlan like she could laser him out of existence. He didn't flinch. He just sat back down and kept clicking that pen. I knew what was in the envelope before the judge even looked. I'd seen Harlan's face the night I caught him alone by the maintenance shed. I'd heard Lydia's voice through the thin wall. "Just backdate the minutes, Harlan. No one audits these things." Harlan had answered, voice shaking. "This isn't what the charter was written for." She'd laughed. The charter is whatever I say it is. Later that same night I'd knocked on Mrs. Delgado's door 2 lots down. She's a retired court reporter who records everything just in case. She handed me a USB with the deleted livestream archive and a tiny digital recorder she'd left running on her sunroom sill during board meetings. Sometimes I knit loud on purpose, she grinned. Makes them nervous. By the time the judge called a recess, I had my framework. My sketches showed the exact moment the livestream cut when they discussed the exemption. Timestamps matched Harlan's and signed drafts. The audio had Lydia telling another board member, "We can redact it later, who's going to check?" Black humor at its finest. The woman who fined people for dishonest lawn care was literally forging the lawn of her own authority. Claire and I walked back to the pavilion that afternoon. The wisteria was still blooming defiantly even though frost had nipped the edges. She sat on the bench I built, ran her fingers over the groove I'd carved. "For the days you can walk this far." I pulled out my sketchbook again, not for court this time, but for the new scene I just witnessed behind the shed. Lydia and her vice president, Paul, arguing in whispers. "If this gets out, they'll audit everything," Paul hissed. "Then redact it," Lydia snapped. "You can if you control the minutes." I sketched their positions, the angle from Mrs. Delgado's window, every detail. Not admissible alone, but when paired with the audio and Harlan's envelope, it became the noose. That evening my phone rang. Blocked number. Lydia's voice still honey-sweet, but with razor blades underneath. "You think you're clever, Logan? Spreading lies about procedural issues? Slander works both ways, darling." I answered calmly. "I have proof, Lydia. And unlike your minutes, mine is signed, time-stamped, and witnessed." She laughed that tinkling laugh again. "The board trusts me. The neighborhood fears, respects me." "Fear isn't respect," I said. "And your throne is built on paper that's about to burn." She hung up. The next morning Harlan showed up at my door before sunrise, rain dripping off his glasses, clutching a folder like a life raft. "She told me to falsify the vote," he said the second he stepped inside. "Said the exemption threatened community control. Promised the others would sign if I made it look clean." He pushed the originals across my table, handwritten notes with the line motion not held, lacking quorum, crossed out in his own handwriting. Metadata proved the typed version was submitted the next day under his name. "When she threw that chair," he whispered, "I realized she wasn't just misusing power. She's dangerous." And I helped her. I copied everything. Sent one set to the judge, one to the state HOA Oversight Board, one sealed for the neighborhood. Then I added the cherry on top. A formal petition signed by me, Harlan, Mrs. Delgado, old Mr. Whitaker, and the Patels, demanding Lydia's immediate suspension pending full audit. 7 names. Enough to trigger Article 9, the one rule she'd never bothered to read because she thought she wrote the book. The board meeting room smelled like lemon polish and fear. Lydia stood behind the folding table in her signature white gloves, smiling like nothing had changed. Except everything had. This wasn't her usual rubber stamp session. This was the mandatory review triggered the second our petition hit the Oversight Committee. 7 homeowners, a binder full of contradictions, and the state breathing down her neck. "I'll begin by addressing these baseless accusations," she started, voice smooth as ever. "A small group of malcontents is trying to destabilize the harmony we've all worked so hard to maintain." She paced, heels clicking like a metronome of denial. "There was no fraud. There were no illegal votes. Mr. Reeves here simply has too much time on his hands and a sketchbook full of conspiracy theories." Harlan stood up quietly. "Actually, Lydia, the minutes you submitted for the exemption revocation were never authorized. I was instructed to backdate them. I refused. Here are the originals." He placed the folder on the table like he was laying down a royal flush. The room went dead silent. Then Mr. Whitaker rose. "You denied my handrail because of a rule you invented in a footnote with no vote." Mrs. Delgado stood next. "I have audio of you telling Paul to redact filings and handle Harlan." I stood last. And I have visual timelines, live stream gaps, and metadata proving every amendment in the last year was filed without quorum. The State Oversight Board already has copies. Someone in the back started slow clapping. Then another. Then half the room. Lydia's gloves creaked as her fists tightened. Her smile didn't break. It just froze like a glitch in her operating system. She tried one last volley. This is personal vendetta. His wife's little bench is not more important than. But the words died when the vice president quietly slid the oversight letter across the table. Effective immediately. Your presidency is suspended pending full audit. The charter is frozen. All recent amendments are null. She didn't throw another chair. She just stood there, pearls suddenly looking cheap under the fluorescent lights, while the room emptied around her like she was already a ghost. No dramatic exit speech. Just the soft click of her heels fading down the hallway as reality finally caught up with the woman who thought she was above it. 2 weeks later, the state audit team arrived like white-collar exterminators. They found forged signatures, deleted records, backdated votes, the works. The charter was suspended. An interim board was appointed. Lydia's name was quietly removed from the welcome signs. And the bench? It stayed. Wisteria blooming brighter than ever, like it knew it had one. Claire sits there every morning now, sunlight on her face, no fines, no notices, no fear. The neighborhood feels different, lighter. People wave instead of looking away. Even Harlan smiles when he walks past. Rulebook finally closed for good. Mrs. Delgado still records everything just in case, but now she does it with a grin. I never wanted to be the guy who brought down an HOA queen. I just wanted my wife to have a place to sit without pain. But sometimes the quiet ones who watch, who sketch, who remember every angle and every lie, they're the ones who end the reign of the loudest. So here's the question I keep turning over while I watch Claire breathe easy on that bench. Was Lydia Beaumont really protecting community standards? Or was she just a bully who got caught turning a homeowners association into her own personal kingdom? Was the bench the violation, or was the woman who threw a chair to defend it? You tell me, who was actually in the wrong here?